Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to go over some random things that I didn't know about labor and very close after labor, so the first beginning of postpartum, everything like that. Thanks for joining me and let's get started. Okay, so I have a list on my phone and because sometimes, well, mom brain, let's be honest, there's just so much going on and then random things I kept remembering and thinking of that it's like, oh yeah, I should definitely include that, so I made a list. One of the very first things, the swelling, guys. Oh my goodness. I had no idea that so I didn't swell really at all. I swelled a little bit once when I was outside in Florida walking all around Epcot. So like I swelled, that's the only time that I swelled during pregnancy. So I thought the days of swelling were behind me and I was very wrong. So because there's so much fluid going out, I guess like it has to go somewhere after you give birth. So it went straight to my legs. My legs were ginormous. I kid you not, it felt like when I would walk sometimes, it felt like the top of my foot, like right here, right, would have like this little sack of water. Like I would walk and it would jiggle like jello. You couldn't see it obviously because I'm walking, but like it felt like there was jello on the top of my foot. That's how swollen I was. It was absurd. So I'm actually going to include a picture right here of my legs, what they looked like on Friday. I gave birth Sunday. And then this is what my legs looked like on Friday. Absolutely ridiculous. I was so swollen. Make sure you get yourself some compression socks. Your insurance might cover it if you go to the right website. I will try and find the one that I went to. Get yourself some compression socks. They helped me greatly. Hydrate, 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 which sounds ridiculous because you're holding water, so you want less water, but no. Hydrate and it'll flush out your body and it'll make it so much better. But my legs were ridiculously swollen. Make sure you have some extra big flip-flops because bringing your baby to the pediatrician or trying to get anywhere, I couldn't fit in any shoes. And make sure the shoes that you have to leave the hospital in have a big enough size for you. Alright, so now one during labor. Shakes. You can absolutely, I kept thinking I had the shivers, like I was cold, but I would put the blanket over top of me and I was still violently shaking. And it can be kind of scary, but it's a completely normal thing. I guess it's the rush of hormones and stuff like that. That's the nurses would explain to me. But I got the shakes super bad, had them for the longest time, especially after I got the Pitocin and stuff, because I was induced. So getting the Pitocin and everything like that gave me the crazy shakes. But really just the farther along I got, the more shakes I had. And you can still have them after you gave birth, which is even more terrifying because you have these violent shakes. And, well, for me, I had a cesarean, so I had this not open wound anymore, but like I just had surgery, so I was violently shaking and I'm holding this little fragile baby and I'm violently shaking. So it was scary, but it's completely normal and you can get through it. That is one thing I suggest though. I had the softest blanket that I brought with me to the hospital, and when my husband went home because our stay was extended because it took me so long to actually give birth, and then with the surgery we were staying longer, he went home and got my comfy pillow. My own personal pillow and my own personal blanket made a complete difference. It made me feel more comfortable, especially going through labor with my own blanket. It just gave me that peace and being able to feel more comfortable rather than like scratchy hospital blankets. When I was cold, I put the other blankets over top of my comfy blanket and it worked perfectly. So that is definitely a suggestion. So I found this out actually while I was pregnant, but I didn't know it beforehand. No matter what kind of birth you have, you will bleed for several weeks after birth. I stopped around 4 weeks postpartum, and it's because your uterine lining was built up so much for pregnancy and it's got to get it all out there. So definitely take as many of those pads from the hospital as you possibly can. Store up on them. And store up, especially if you have a cesarean. I cannot stress this enough. Store up on the mesh underpants from the hospital. They tried to tell me my second to last day, they're like, oh, she can wear her own underwear, don't worry about it. But can I? Because my incision is right there where my underwear line is. So that is another thing we ordered. I ordered high-waisted underwear, and it was so helpful, especially in those weeks when I'm still on painkillers, and everything's just so sensitive. You still have, like, I had a tape over top of my incision, so I literally nothing can touch it, and it's so uncomfortable. And when it's itchy because it's healing, high-waisted underwear and the mesh underwear. I wish I had gotten more when I was at the hospital, but they didn't want to give me a bunch because they were like, oh, she can wear her own underwear. Okay, so that actually, with that, stick with your painkillers. Make sure that you, in the hospital, are on top of the nurses, making sure that they're giving them to you, knowing what hours you have to take them at and stuff like that. And then it can be so difficult to make sure you're on top of them while you have a newborn at your house and it's the first 72 hours kind of thing. But oh my gosh, definitely stay on them, especially with cesarean. It was such a painful experience, painful recovery and everything. And you can't take care of your baby if you're not taking care of yourself. And if you're in immense pain, you want to make sure you're staying on top of those. And surprisingly, they will remove your catheter and everything that day. Unless, of course, like you have a cesarean in the middle at night or something, then it would probably be the next day. But I gave birth at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 12 we had moved to the maternity ward, so like mother-baby area. And by like 2, I want to say, they had removed my catheter and everything, and were like, yeah, you gotta get up and get moving. And I was like, really? I don't want to move. I don't feel like I can. Like, I can barely move in this bed, and you want me to get up and walk to the bathroom? So just keep that in mind, is that things get moving really quickly, and don't push yourself too much. Make sure you have constant help, especially with insane kind of recoveries, whether it's from a tear or just insane labor or cesarean, whatever it is. Just take it easy on yourself and make sure you have the assistance. Fun fact, there is a difference in the epidurals for vaginal birth and cesarean, which I guess makes sense. But I experienced both of them because the original goal was to deliver vaginally, and I couldn't. So I had gotten the epidural around 11 p.m. If you haven't watched my labor vlog, I encourage you to go do that. I'll link it up here. But around 11 p.m. because I was not progressing at all, which that's another fun fact. Your body can just get stuck at dilation. Now, I thought, like, okay, you can not really progress in the beginning, but I figured, like, by the time you're at 6 centimeters, your body's like getting move on, right? No, I got stuck at 8 centimeters for about 10 hours, so that was horrific. But moving backwards, so I got the epidural at like 11 p.m. and at like 7 a.m. when I tried to push, and his shoulder was in the way, and I still had some cervix even though I was fully dilated. They got me set up for everything for a C-section, and they did another epidural, but it was different. It's actually 2 different feelings. They feel completely different. I could still move like my upper body. It felt like I was myself with the first one, but with the cesarean epidural, it takes so much more out of you. And I don't want to discourage anyone. Like, don't be scared to get a cesarean. I was horrified. I was terrified to go into that. When she said it, my heart, she said that's what we had to do, my heart sank. I dreaded it. And then they actually had to give me more medicines and stuff like that. but they actually lay your arms out and you just lay there. And because they had to up my dosage in the middle of everything, not in the middle obviously, but when they're getting ready to go for it, I could barely move my head, and I was just like back and forth, and then shortly afterwards I could like scratch my nose and came back, and it was absolutely insane. But yeah, that is another thing, that it was just, the two epidurals are very different. So if you've been through a cesarean and you're going for a VBAC, the epidural is very different. It obviously has some similarities, but if you get the epidural for your VBAC, don't feel like you're gonna feel the same exact way. Don't look into that like that. My one friend who was going for a VBAC, had asked about that, and I realized that I had experienced both of them, so it was really interesting how much in my just one labor I had experienced. But that is another thing. Let's see, what else did I have? This is the last thing on my list. Yeah, okay, so last thing on my list, babe can move around until the very end. Literally, my child still felt like he was turning and flipping and kicking and everything until the very end. Like, even after he was pushing, I could still feel things going on, like I was pushing, duh. But I could still feel movement around and everything like that. So that was insane. Like, that, I just never figured. They say, like, towards the end of your pregnancy, you start feeling less movement and stuff like that, because they're bigger. They have less space. They can't move around as much. But my little boy was still doing somersaults while I was in my hospital room being induced, and like all this stuff in the middle of labor and everything. So he was just having a blast with us. So yeah, that is pretty much everything that I could tell you. If you have more questions, please go down. I was induced. I was 36 hours of labor. I pushed a little bit, but then went into a cesarean, so I can answer a bunch of questions for you. I may not be able to answer everything because I've only gone through one birth, but it was a lot. So if you have questions, leave them down in the comments or message me on Instagram, stuff like that. My Instagram handle is at the end of the video. And yeah, thank you for joining me today. If you want to see more videos on motherhood, pregnancy, labor, all of this stuff, definitely subscribe and hit the thumbs up button down below if any of this helped you, or if you just like to listen. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.